My fiancé, Victor Song, after his accident, fell in love with the woman who saved him. Out of concern for him, I, Anna Nguyen, gently persuaded her to leave, and so she disappeared quietly, without a single word of farewell. In the end, she died alone, in a shabby rented room. 5 years later, my family went bankrupt. My father, heartbroken, fell ill and passed away. As for me, I crashed into the water when my car's brakes failed. And my husband? He simply stood there, arms folded, watching me struggle in utter despair. When he saw I had no strength left, as if a weight had finally lifted, he pulled out a photo and coldly said, "You deserve this. This is what you owed her." Reborn, I returned to the past. Victor's father tried to comfort me, saying, "Don't worry, Anna. Even if my son wants to marry that girl, I won't allow it." But I shook my head. "Uncle, please, let them be together. My heart already belongs to someone else. This time, I've come to call off the engagement on behalf of my family. I died on my birthday. It should have been the beginning of my life, but Victor Song turned it into the end. Water crept in, slowly filling the car, suffocating me. The door wouldn't budge, no matter how hard I tried. I looked up to see him standing above the water, smiling, with no intention of saving me. Only then did I realize why the brakes had failed. But why? I still couldn't understand. How could he be so heartless? I had loved Victor Song for 8 years, given him all my sincerity, never once betrayed him. His family ran a luxury wine business. Mine owned the biggest winery in the region. Our families worked together, prospered together. Since the day we met, I'd brought them countless clients, countless benefits. Yet just days after inheriting the family business, he wanted me dead. I stared at him in despair, letting the water slowly drown me. Suddenly, Victor took out a photograph of a woman. When he turned it over, the face seemed vaguely familiar. His own face turned cold and distant as he spoke. "You deserved it. Who told you to kill Julia Truong?" I'd almost forgotten who she was. Only when he brought her up did I remember. I couldn't believe it. 5 years had passed, and he still hadn't forgotten, still blamed me for her death. I wanted to curse him, call him heartless, but the pain was so crushing I couldn't utter a word. My consciousness faded. The last thing I saw was his back, as he turned away and left me to die. That suffocating feeling still lingered, until suddenly I realized I was no longer trapped by the seatbelt, no longer drowning. As I slowly regained consciousness, I found myself sitting at my computer desk, sunlight gently spilling across the room, the soft sound of piano music in the background. My best friend was scrolling on her phone beside me, then frowned. "Oh no, my poor idol just fell again. I hope he's not seriously hurt." Hearing that, I suddenly realized today was the day her idol got injured, and also the day Victor Song was discharged from the hospital. So, I wasn't dead. I had been reborn, brought back to the time before our wedding. There was no time to think. The hospital called to say Victor was about to be discharged. As the fiancé of the Song Corporation's heir, if I didn't show up, the media would make a scene. I quickly pulled my best friend along to the hospital. I knew just a few days earlier he'd had an accident and was saved by a girl he kept in contact with. In my previous life, not only did he treat her as a sister, but he often brought her to dinner with us. At that moment, Victor Song was wearing a hospital gown, his face still pale, but his striking good looks unchanged. We'd known each other for 10 years. Everyone said we were a perfect couple. Back in high school, when dating was forbidden, he quietly protected me. If any boy even approached, he'd get jealous instantly. We used to wear matching jackets, go home together after class. Everyone at school knew how deeply Victor loved me. Even my college roommate once said, "Anna, I bet you'll marry him right after graduation." Back then, I only smiled and said nothing, because in my heart I was waiting too. I was waiting for the day we'd graduate, when Victor would kneel on one knee and propose to me in front of everyone's admiring eyes. But no one could have predicted that, just days before graduation, he'd be in a car accident. And after he recovered, suddenly, there was another girl by his side, the very girl who was with him at that moment, helping him pack his things. Her name was Julia Truong. She was thin, with pale skin, and eyes that, though not large, always seemed to shine. When she looked at Victor, her gaze was gentle, utterly devoted. Yet when she saw me step into the room, her expression shifted, becoming almost unreadable, like I was the intruder, the one who didn't belong. My presence seemed to make her uncomfortable, as if I was the third wheel. After all, when I stood in the doorway, they were talking and laughing, and I just felt like an outsider, awkward and out of place. In my previous life, I'd felt the same, not because I was insecure, but because, that day, I could truly see the struggle in Victor's eyes. A woman's intuition told me, all those years together, perhaps I was the only one who believed in our love. It hurt, of course, realizing that besides the promise our parents made, Victor and I were never really bound to each other. So I had already begun preparing myself to let go. Yet after all those years, he had treated me well, so I wanted him to inherit his family's legacy smoothly. I forced myself to hold back my feelings and gently reminded him, Victor, do your parents know about the two of you? I think you shouldn't tell them right now. It wouldn't be good for her. The media these days can't be trusted. Wait until you've taken over the company, then go public. Victor said nothing. But I never expected that just a few words like that would later become the reason for his hatred toward me. At that moment, Julia noticed me and tried to be friendly, reaching out her hand and calling me sister-in-law. In my previous life, I felt a bit awkward, but still politely shook her hand. Now I couldn't even be bothered. She stood there, her hand hovering in mid-air, the moment growing uncomfortable. My best friend looked at me in surprise, not understanding why I was suddenly so cold, when I was always courteous to everyone. Even the other patients and their families in the room watched us as if they were at the theater. Victor couldn't stand the attention, and gently reminded me, Anna, Julia's saying hello. His tone was soft, but I knew him too well. Whenever he bit his lip while speaking, it meant he was starting to lose patience. I pretended not to notice, just glanced at the fruit basket by the bed. Julia, seeing me ignore her, looked a little upset, withdrew her hand awkwardly, and picked up an apple from the basket, holding it out to me. Sister-in-law, have an apple. It's really sweet. I simply glanced at her, then turned away and sat down on the edge of the bed, taking a different apple for myself, and peeling it, slowly and deliberately. Seeing this, Julia turned to look at Victor, her eyes already reddened. I could clearly see the look of hurt in her eyes. But hurt? No, I just wanted to see how long she could keep up the act. She was acting, that much was clear. Playing the pitiful one now, and once she'd gotten what she wanted, she'd vanish. Back then, I'd seen stories about their so-called Prince and Cinderella romance everywhere online. Sometimes I even felt a little jealous. But later I happened to read a comment that said she wasn't as simple as she seemed. I didn't really believe it at first, but worried for Victor, I still had someone look into Julia Truong. My best friend scolded me for meddling, but I was stubborn. For Victor, I thought anything was worth it. And the person I asked really had some skills. He discovered Julia was frequently calling someone overseas, and even managed to get a recording of a call between her and that man. After listening to that recording, I felt a chill run down my spine. She called the man on the other end of the line, her godfather. Her voice so sweet it sent chills down my spine. If I didn't know a trick or two, how could I ever make Victor Song trust me? Book a ticket for me, would you? I want to come hide out at your place for a few days. He's a rich boy, you know. All I have to do is be his lover. I'll have fine food and nice clothes, and never have to worry for the rest of my life. Besides, he's exactly the type who loves blindly. I saved his life, then played hard to get. Just watch. He'll be obsessed with me. Don't worry. If I disappear, he'll be frantic trying to find me. Her push-pull act fooled everyone. Victor, me, his entire family, even the media. I once asked Victor what he liked so much about her. He answered coldly, All my life, people have tried to please me, just because I'm the son of Thomas Song. I'm his favorite child. If it wasn't for our family's business arrangement, would you even have married me? But she's different. She saved me without knowing who I was. She took care of me, expected nothing in return. She's so good to me. Why shouldn't I love her? His words left me speechless. He was right. If it weren't for our parents' connection, how would Victor and I have ever met, let alone fallen in love? That day, when he was in the accident, his injuries were so severe, his face was barely recognizable. It was Julia Truong who risked her own life to pull him out of the wreck. In that moment, Victor saw her as a light in his darkness. She was nothing like everyone else. She asked for nothing, devoted herself entirely to him. If she was so good, why shouldn't he marry her? When he said all that, I couldn't even disagree. If it had been me, I probably would have called the police, rather than rushing in myself. I'd always been cautious, always thought twice before doing anything. But his story made me start doubting myself. Yet, thinking back now, even if Victor was severely injured at the time, he was driving a Lamborghini. How could Julia not know he was from a wealthy family? I'm certain she knew his identity from the very start and approached him on purpose. At that moment, Victor finally lost patience with my silence, his tone sharp. "Anna, what's your problem?" Sensing the tension in his voice, Julia stood up, softly stepping in. "You both haven't eaten yet, have you? Let me go get something. Victor, you still love soup dumplings, don't you?" Then she turned to me, voice gentle. "Anna, is there anything you'd like?" I knew full well she understood my relationship with Victor. Her act of being considerate and understanding was just a way to gain his sympathy. I took a bite of my apple and firmly declined. "I don't eat outside food. It's not safe." My coldness finally pushed Victor over the edge. He knocked the apple from my hand, shouting, "Anna, haven't you done enough already?" My best friend was shocked. Even the nurse who'd just entered to handle his discharge paperwork froze in surprise. Victor's voice turned icy. "Is this what your family taught you?" Then, turning to Julia, his face instantly softened. "Don't be upset with her." I could only laugh bitterly. In my previous life, after I uncovered Julia's secrets and warned Victor not to trust her so easily, it was just a few days later that the news broke. Julia had taken her own life in her small apartment, unable to marry into the Song family. Victor sent me a message then. "People are so unpredictable, Anna." Back then, I thought he was talking about Julia, so I didn't think much of it. Only in the final moments, as I drowned in the icy water, did I finally realize the unpredictable heart he spoke of was mine. Seeing me still sitting there in silence, Victor finally snapped. "Didn't you hear what I said? She politely greeted you, even offered you an apple, and asked what you wanted to eat. What's your attitude, Anna? Let me tell you, even if Julia Truong didn't exist, I still wouldn't want to marry you. After all these years, I never thought you'd turn out to be so rude, so ill-mannered. Aren't you going to apologize?" Watching him yell at me like a madman, I couldn't help but think how foolish I'd been in my past life, falling for someone like that. I shrugged, turned my back, and walked out to the car. My best friend thought I was just pretending to be strong and expected me to burst into tears once we got to the car. But instead, I calmly chewed my gum, snapped my fingers, and said, "Come on, let's have a feast and then go to the Song's house." She stared at me, baffled. "What?" I repeated myself, smiling, and this time she panicked. "You're not going to tell the adults, are you?" I gave her a sharp look. "Do you think I'm a 3-year-old? She still didn't get it, so I just smiled mysteriously. "You'll see in a minute." After we finished our big meal, it was time to get down to business. When we arrived at the Song family's mansion, Victor and Julia had just returned from the hospital. Seeing me follow them, Victor looked annoyed. "What are you doing at my house?" I ignored him, walked straight past as if he was invisible, and asked the butler at the gate, "Is Mr. Song home?" Mr. Song had always been close to my father. Our families had been friends for years. I was sure that, while Victor was sick, he'd told his father about breaking off the engagement. Mr. Song was probably feeling awkward about it. Hearing that I was there to see his father, Victor quickly pulled Julia in front of me, his eyes full of arrogance. "Don't think just because my dad liked you since you were little, he'll do whatever you want. I'm his only son, and I've already told him. I'll only marry Julia. If you're here to make a scene or threaten to hurt yourself, don't blame me if you regret it." I looked at his face, not because he seemed unfamiliar, but because, in that moment, I suddenly realized he'd always been this way. From childhood to adulthood, he always got what he wanted. If he didn't, he'd push people aside without a second thought, even me, his fiancée, with a wedding date already set. He'd been spoiled all his life, never realizing that his peaceful, privileged world only existed because his parents carried all the burdens for him. I couldn't help but scoff. Ever heard the saying, "A smart dog never blocks the road"? Maybe no one had ever spoken to him that way before. Certainly, he'd never seen me this cold. For a moment, he was speechless and could only let me walk inside. Inside the house, Mr. Song was busy giving an interview to a group of reporters about the family's expanding winery business. When he saw Victor and Julia walk in together, he immediately understood what was happening. His face darkened and he quickly pulled me aside. "Anna, don't worry. I'll never agree to their relationship, and I'd never let you suffer such a loss." He was afraid I'd make a scene and embarrass everyone, but I knew this was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. This time, I wouldn't keep sacrificing myself for others. In front of the reporters, I poured Mr. Song a cup of tea and smiled. "Uncle, they really do love each other. I know I can't compare to her, so I hope you'll give them your blessing. Besides, I already have someone else in my heart. I'm here today to call off the engagement on behalf of my family." As soon as the words left my lips, the entire room fell silent. The reporters immediately realized they'd landed on a hot story, and by the next day, headlines everywhere were speculating about the collapse of the alliance between two powerful families. The Song family heir had fallen for his lifesaver, and the two were making a public appearance together. All the rumors that had swirled before, uncertain and unsubstantiated, were now officially confirmed. By me, the very person at the center of it all, and right in front of the top news outlets. I'd put my own seal on their relationship, and finally, close that chapter for good. I heard that after I left, Mr. Song was so furious, he slapped Victor right across the face, right in front of the reporters. Of course, when I got home, I couldn't escape my own father's storm of anger. He was so mad, it was like he'd lost his mind. How could you make such a decision without even discussing it with your family? It's one thing to break off an engagement, but you had to do it in front of the press. Did you drink some bootleg wine from someone else's house, or what? I sat quietly on the couch, looking every bit the frightened little girl on the outside. But inside, I was secretly overjoyed. My father paced the room, chain-smoking, trying to think of a way to fix things. Eventually, he decided to bring a rare bottle of our own family's limited edition red wine over to the Song family, hoping an apology and a peace offering might help smooth things over. "Just tell them you lost your temper and spoke without thinking. Go on, get moving." But my tone was calm and unyielding. "I'm not going." "What do you mean you're not going?" "I'm not marrying him. If you want a wedding so badly, then you go marry him yourself." He was so mad his lips trembled, and he strode over to check my forehead for a fever. "Are you really my daughter, Anna? Is it really you?" "Of course I'm Anna Nguyen," I said. But I wasn't the same Anna from my previous life anymore. If I hadn't lived through so much pain before, how could I be this resolute now? I used to be gentle, obedient, always careful to act gracefully in front of my elders, always thinking of others. But now, to be able to calmly declare the end of an engagement in front of both family elders and the media, the old me could never have done that, even if it meant dying. But growing up under my father's influence, a good, gentle man who never fought for himself, was exactly why, in my last life, our family ended in tragedy. Out of loyalty to Mr. Song, my father agreed to merge our companies. never suspecting Victor would manipulate the contract's shares and force him out of the board. In just a moment, my father's life's work was wiped away. He died in sorrow, and my mother fell sick from grief and soon passed after him. Life had proved to me that being kind, naive, and blindly trusting others does not guarantee a happy ending. That day, I burned all the love letters I had ever written to Victor. My best friend, Nguyen, called. "Anna, did you really just send a friend request to Westin Song? Are you actually thinking of getting close to him? Honestly, you should just apologize to Victor. Maybe he's only playing around with that girl." "He's not worth apologizing to," I said quietly, and adding Westin as a friend. "I just want to get to know him, nothing more." After talking to Nguyen, I picked up my phone and stared at Westin Song's profile picture. He had a gentle, handsome face. Westin Song was Victor's older half-brother. His own mother had died young, and Mr. Song remarried, fathering Victor with his sharp-tongued new wife. Just a few words from her could get Westin kicked out of the Song family. Still, Mr. Song kept some compassion, quietly helping Westin start a small business. No one expected Westin's inherited business talent would allow that company to thrive. But after Mr. Song passed away, Victor and his mother used the old man's name to gradually buy out all of Westin's key suppliers, crippling his business. In the end, he was forced to leave the country to start over, only to be taken by illness far from home. I only remembered all this after my rebirth. If Westin Song had someone powerful backing him, maybe the Song family wouldn't have ended up in Victor's hands. But in this life, I am still the heiress of the region's largest winery, and he is the legitimate first son of the Song family. If we joined forces, it could only lead to mutual benefit. The scandal between Victor Song and Julia Truong had been all over the news for days, but by now, it was slowly dying down. Under the sun, every story eventually gets picked apart, and when there's nothing new to say, people move on. Soon the gossip changed. "It's just another rich kid playing around. There's no way the Song family would really let an ordinary girl into their inner circle. A 100-year-old business empire won't be ruined by a spoiled 20-something. But Victor didn't care. Every day, he lived an easy, carefree life, managing a handful of wine distribution companies. For years, my father had supplied the Song family with wine at low prices, bringing them countless new business deals. With all that money at his disposal, Victor spent his days either escorting Julia to fancy places or traveling the world with her, enjoying life. So when their distribution contracts were cut or replaced, he didn't even notice. Watching Victor's complete indifference to the business, Westin Song once told me, "This is just the appetizer, Anna. The real meal is still to come." I could only applaud him. He was absolutely right. In less than a week, every newspaper carried headlines, "Victor Song to marry the Cinderella who saved his life." Reporters asked, what was it about this girl that could tame the infamous Victor Song? Was he truly in love, or just momentarily infatuated? Would Thomas Song really allow a girl with no family background to enter the Song family? Would the son follow the same disastrous path as his father, who, after his wife died, married a beautiful woman right away? Now even Mr. Song's name was back in the rumor mill. But this time, Mr. Song knew there was no easy way out. No matter whom he supported, someone would be left out. And our family, once their most loyal supplier, would definitely turn our backs on them, bringing with us a whole network of business partners. Mr. Song just sighed, thinking all this was fate, never realizing that behind the chaos, the mastermind was the very eldest son he'd always overlooked. Westin Song. The media is a sharp weapon, and Westin knew how to wield it. He kept working behind the scenes, smiling as he tapped away on his laptop. "I never imagined you'd be this decisive, Anna," he teased. I smiled back. If I hesitated now, it would be an embarrassment to my family name. My best friend, Nguyen, when she heard that Victor was determined to marry Julia, was furious. "What an idiot! He's throwing away a stunning, talented heiress like you for someone like her." I just shrugged. Any relationship that's so easily lost was never the right one to begin with. She looked at me in surprise, unable to understand how I could be so calm, but I just smiled quietly. Only after experiencing death could I understand these things. After all the drama, my father realized there was no turning back. He finally sighed and let it go. My daughter has always been spoiled. She could never stand this kind of humiliation. If Victor has chosen someone else, there's no point in forcing it. The people in our social circle nodded along, pretending to sympathize. Only Mr. Song was silent, deep in thought, saying nothing. Not long after, the news cycle shifted. Suddenly, I became the new target. Wealthy heiress dumped. Infertility rumors. Fact or fiction? Abandoned by the Song family. Where will Anna Nguyen go? A whole youth spent waiting for the heir, only to be left with a goodbye. But as for me, I wasn't bothered by the speculation about my future. But Mr. Song looked troubled and couldn't sleep, and my father was so anxious he fell ill. The truth was, the real excitement was only just beginning. Less than 2 days later, a new scandal hit the front page, exactly as Westin and I had planned. The latest tabloids screamed, "Heiress Anna Nguyen, surrounded by handsome suitors." Was Victor Song's breakup because of a new romance? Did Anna Nguyen already have someone new? Suddenly, photos of me alongside several impressive young men were everywhere, fueling speculation that perhaps I had moved on, or perhaps Victor wasn't the only one with secrets. The media was in a frenzy. The heiress Anna Nguyen's new lover, his face a mirror image of Thomas Song. A blossoming romance. Anna Nguyen and Victor Song's half-brother go public. Rumors ignited like wildfire, reaching their peak when Westin Song took my hand and stood with me in front of Mr. Song himself. The entire room fell silent. Westin declared, "Father, I care for Anna. I want to marry her." I just smiled and poured Mr. Song a cup of tea, saying gently, "Uncle, the person I once mentioned, the one in my heart, was him all along." For a moment, Mr. Song was speechless. Then, as if suddenly realizing the truth, his eyes softened when he looked at Westin. Only now did he see that, when his youngest son had thrown the family into chaos, it was the eldest son, the one he'd overlooked for so many years, who had become his salvation. After a warm family dinner, Mr. Song happily announced he would host a wedding for me and Westin. Meanwhile, Victor sat off to the side, pouring himself drink after drink, his face switching from pale to flushed and back again. It wasn't that he still wanted me, it was that he'd always been sure I would love him for the rest of my life. Seeing me by another man's side, he couldn't accept it. Still, Mr. Song made things easy for him and Julia, simply postponing their wedding by a month. That night, after I'd returned home, Victor called. His voice was full of anger. "Anna Nguyen, just how long have you and Westin been together? Are you doing this just to spite me? You're not a child, Anna. I'm telling you, if you marry him, you'll regret it." I laughed coldly and replied without the slightest courtesy, "Whether I regret it or not is none of your business. Worry about yourself." Suddenly, I remembered my last life. Right before I died, Victor had looked me in the eye and said, "If you hadn't said those things, Julia and I would have been happy together long ago." That's why, in this life, I carved that lesson deep into my heart. I would never again interfere with someone else's fate, just because I thought it was for their own good. Now, all I wanted was to live my own life, and see for myself just how happy they could be. Night fell, and a cold wind sent a shiver through me. Westin placed a light blanket over my shoulders. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly, his gentle smile making my heart ache as I remembered how his life had ended in my previous world. Over these past weeks, Westin and I had grown close. He was always thoughtful, caring, and so attentive. Sometimes I wondered if I could really spend my life with him, maybe that would be a wonderful thing. I'd been sitting too long, and my legs had gone numb. As I stood up, I stumbled and fell into his arms. Weston stroked my hair tenderly, his eyes as warm as spring water. "My future wife," he teased. "Do you want a son or a daughter?" My cheeks instantly flushed. "What are you talking about?" I grumbled, embarrassed. But he just chuckled and smoothed my hair, pulling me close. Reaching for his teacup, I whispered shyly, "What about you?" He murmured, "As long as it's your child, I'll love them all the same." Meanwhile, my best friend Nguyen was surfing the web and discovered Julia Truong's social media account. It was full of photos of luxury cars, designer bags, and a lavish lifestyle worthy of a queen. Nguyen muttered, "She really is showing off her sugar daddy for all the world to see." I couldn't argue. After all, my investigation had uncovered the truth. Julia's real name was Julia Nguyen, and she'd been arrested several times for prostitution before suddenly disappearing from the scene. Word was she'd met a wealthy patron, decided to turn her life around, and had extensive plastic surgery to become the sweet, gentle Julia Truong everyone saw today. As for that mysterious overseas phone call from her past life, the man on the other end was none other than her godfather, the rich tycoon who is now completely bankrupt. The cruelest truth of all, the car accident that changed Victor's life had actually been carefully staged by Julia and her patron. At first, I planned to keep the evidence hidden until the day the Song family divided their inheritance. Then I'd reveal everything. But Julia's true colors were exposed far earlier than I expected. Word spread that she and her godfather were spotted leaving a hotel together, caught red-handed by a sharp-eyed reporter. Not only did the reporter not shy away from trouble, he even dug up Julia's old scandals. It was only then that Victor finally learned about her past. Rumor had it, during that period, he went to the hospital over and over, terrified he might have caught something from her. One of the Song family's longtime housekeepers whispered to me, "Mr. Song never liked Julia from the start. Since she came into the picture, their daily expenses have rivaled what an entire family would spend in a month." When the whole messy story came to light, Mr. Song's blood pressure shot through the roof. And Victor, he acted as if he were completely blind to reality. While his father was still in the hospital, Victor announced he didn't want to marry Julia anymore, even boldly declaring, "If my brother hadn't stolen my true love, Nguyen would be my wife now." Mr. Song was so furious, he nearly hurled a pot of boiling water at him. The housekeeper confided, "I've been with this family over 10 years and never seen the old master so angry." But honestly, I wasn't surprised. Victor had always been this way, doing whatever he pleased. Back in school, he'd constantly flirt with other girls. I was naive back then, thinking he was only trying to make me jealous. Now I realize that was just his true nature. The Song family still had a prestigious reputation, but Victor's flip-flopping engagements had turned them into a laughingstock. Naturally, this wasn't good for business. Eventually, Mr. Song simply said, "Fine. If you won't marry her, then cut all ties." But Mrs. Song knew just how to make a scene. In front of her husband, she lashed Victor with a belt, and tears streaming, cried, "If you can't teach him, then you deal with him. Beat him if you want." Mr. Song, at his wit's end, could only tremble with rage. "Just get a taxi and get out of my sight." That night, Victor got drunk and stumbled to my house. Just as Weston and I had finished an intimate conversation about how we'd decorate our home if we had a son and a daughter one day, Victor arrived to see both of us in pajamas, hair tousled, and his face turned ashen. Weston, ever the gentleman, wrapped his arms around me possessively, and with a wicked smile, lightly traced his fingers over a love bite on my neck. Victor, reeking of alcohol, must have been out of his mind. He blurted out, "Anna, we've known each other for years, and you never even let me touch you. But you and my brother, how long have you been married? And already you're like this." Honestly, I wanted to slap him, but before I could say a word, Weston burst out laughing. "Little brother, you worry too much. You and Julia aren't even married yet, but I'm sure you've done everything there is to do. Anna and I are legally wed. There's nothing inappropriate about what we do." He then cupped my face and kissed me soundly, the smack echoing in the hallway. Victor's face went ghostly pale. I was only with her for fun. I stared at him. Is it really worth throwing your life away just to spite me? He glared at me, but I smiled back, radiant. Absolutely worth it. In fact, I wish I'd met your brother even sooner. I leaned into Weston's embrace, leaving Victor so stunned he couldn't speak. Weston just added with biting sarcasm, "Well, little brother, go enjoy your own games. Don't delay the main event for your big brother and sister-in-law." He moved to close the door, but Victor blocked it with his shoulder, suddenly desperate. "Anna, you're still mad at me, aren't you? I know you are. It's all that scheming woman Julia's fault. The one you should marry is me." In that moment, Weston immediately seized Victor's wrist, his expression turning icy. "She's your sister-in-law, my wife. I'd advise you to have some self-respect." But Victor truly knew no shame. He tried to force his way further into our home, even pretending to call his father for help. "Uncle Song, please, help me." The moment Victor heard me actually call for Mr. Song, he let go of my hand. I glared at him, locked the door tight, and set the security system, knowing full well he only backed down because he was afraid his father might cut off his funds. Sure enough, things were quiet for a few days, but just as I thought the drama was over, Julia showed up at my door next. She gripped my hand desperately, refusing to let go. "Anna, Victor wants to call off the engagement, and he's been so cruel. He even called me a liar. He must hate me for my past. But everything I did was before I met him. I really love him now. Please, could you help me talk to him? I know I've made mistakes, but I truly care about him. Lately, he's been acting like a different person, yelling at me, saying things that make no sense. Like, if it weren't for me, you would still be alive. Anna, is there something wrong with him? He refuses to see anyone but you. Please, I'm begging you, just talk to him for me." Listening to her pleas, a strange suspicion crept over me. The last time Victor spoke to me, his words were odd too. Now he was saying that if it weren't for Julia, I wouldn't have died. Could it be? Had Victor also come back from the dead? If that was true, would my plans all be ruined? My mind spun in confusion. According to the timeline from my last life, a week from now, Mr. Song would suddenly suffer a stroke. Back then, after his father passed, Victor naturally took over the company. But now, with Weston in the picture, things would never be that easy for him. This time, after marrying me, Weston had been entrusted with the family's winery, and under his management, the company had reached new heights in both strategy and product quality. I was even planning to help Weston gain full control over the Song Corporation. I couldn't afford any mistakes now. So, on the most important night, a week later, just as I had anticipated, I finally sent Victor a message. "Let's meet at our old school." Victor and I had been childhood sweethearts, back when we were still students. After class, he'd always wait for me at the school gate on his motorbike, insisting on giving me a ride home. He used to boast to his friends, "Anna Nguyen is destined to be my wife." Standing in front of those familiar gates again, it felt as if it were only yesterday. Victor was already there, leaning against an old bike, offering me a helmet I quietly refused. He sighed. "Anna, this place is filled with our memories." I stared at the faded letters on the school sign, silent for a long time. This really was the most beautiful chapter of my youth. He finally spoke, his voice trembling. "Anna, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I listened to you and kept my distance from Julia, just as you asked. I restrained myself, tried to keep things clear. But then she disappeared, and I believed you. I thought she'd deceived me. But later she died alone in that cheap apartment, pregnant with a child. I was eaten up with guilt, and that's what turned my sorrow into anger toward you. But it wasn't until after you died that I found out she wasn't at all as innocent as she appeared. The baby, it wasn't even mine. I truly regret everything." I looked at him, my expression unreadable, my voice cold. So that's why, after all that, you bought out my family's winery. That's why you manipulated the share transfer, drove my father to his death from grief, and tampered with my car brakes to make it look like an accident. All this, step by step. Was it just to get revenge for the woman you loved? I stared straight into Victor's eyes and pressed on, my voice cold as ice. Victor, tell me, are you even human anymore? My tone left him flustered, scrambling for words, until he finally pulled out a video that Julia had once sent him. In the footage, Julia was clutching a bottle of pesticide, her eyes red, her whole body shaking. She sobbed, "Victor, are you really not coming to find me? If you don't, I'll die for you to see." Victor's voice in the video was irritated, even cruel. "I hate being threatened more than anything. Drink it then. If you die, maybe I'll come by to collect your corpse." After the video ended, I looked at him and asked, "Weren't you afraid that Julia would actually go through with it?" He just shrugged, indifferent. "What's there to be afraid of? If it wasn't for her, you'd still be alive, and you'd never have become Weston's wife. Besides, the car accident was her fault too. She only wanted to marry me for my family's wealth. Every few days, she'd threaten to kill herself. If she didn't die, she'd have driven me insane. Now, I just find the whole thing disgusting." At that moment, I couldn't stand it anymore. I turned to leave, but he grabbed me angrily. "Anna, the old man's on his deathbed right now. You really think once the inheritance is divided, my brother can just take everything? Don't be so naive. I'll tell you right now, he won't get a single cent. My mother made sure my father wrote the will already. The Song family's entire fortune will go to me. If you regret anything, it's still not too late. Divorce Weston, and I promise, I won't even care that you're used goods." He checked his watch, as if the matter was settled. Hearing that, I couldn't help but burst out laughing, so hard that tears spilled down my cheeks. My laughter made his skin crawl. "Why are you laughing?" he demanded. I just sighed, pulled out my phone, and handed it to him. When he saw the caller ID, he froze, but still picked up. On the other end, Mr. Song's voice rang out, strong as ever. "What, are you that eager for me to die, Victor?" Mr. Song was actually a decent man, greedy for money perhaps, but also someone who valued loyalty. That's why my father had always been so close to him. Because I knew what was coming, I'd made arrangements ahead of time. Mr. Song was sent to the hospital early, underwent surgery, and survived, narrowly escaping his fate. But after that, Julia ended up in a vegetative state. That day she really did drink the poison, and even recorded herself doing it, sending the footage to Victor. But he, afraid of being harassed, just showed me the video and then turned off his phone. When I left the school that night, I realized that, even though Julia had tricked Victor, I couldn't put all the blame for my death on her. So I tried calling her, but after several unanswered attempts, I called emergency services myself. It was still too late. Later, as Victor walked out of the police station, reporters swarmed him. Weston took me with him to pick up Victor. When he saw my slightly rounded belly, his eyes filled with regret. "You two, you're already having a baby?" I leaned close to his ear and whispered something that shattered him even further. "You once had a child too, but you killed it yourself." Victor stood frozen, trembling as if struck by lightning on a clear day. After that, Mr. Song kicked Victor and his mother out of the main house, formally severing all ties with his son. Every bit of the Song fortune was confiscated and handed over to Weston. If it hadn't been for that surgery, when the hospital demanded both sons undergo a blood test, Mr. Song would never have discovered that Victor wasn't even his biological child. Of course, all these truths I only learned in this lifetime. In the years that followed, I gave birth to a son and a daughter. Our home was filled with laughter and warmth. When the children were finally asleep, Weston and I would lean against each other on the balcony, watching the sunset together. The golden light painted his gentle face, making him look even more serene and loving. He softly brushed my hair aside and smiled. "Wife, you know, I once had a dream. An angel told me that I was supposed to die at the age of 25. His eyes sparkled with tenderness as he spoke. I closed my eyes, my heart fluttering, and whispered, "And what else did the angel say?" His voice was gentle as a spring breeze. The angel said, "If you ever meet a girl named Nguyen, never let her go, because she will be the salvation of your life." A little shiver ran through me, and I couldn't help but laugh softly. Looks like in this life, I really did make the right choice. He tilted my chin up, pulled me into his arms, and held me tight. Didn't I tell you? The angel was absolutely right.